Hello, everyone, and welcome to part one of the Pandemic and Panic-Demic, an honest discussion with CEOs of companies marked essential and critical. This two-part series is moderated by Joe Caruso and will explore what's going on in the minds, hearts, and souls of corporate executives. The featured panelists on today's session are Fred Bentley of Dexco Global, Jason Kavanaugh of Concord Holdings, and Alex Burkulas of Cygnus Systems.
Alex, anything further you can tell us about you and why you even do what you do?
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about the company. I founded Cygnus Systems 31 years ago. We are a leading IT managed services and cloud provider. And I've spent most of my time working to help people in business leverage central data and voice technology in order to help them run their businesses more effectively. I've always tried to deliver technology through a human touch, kind of keep it real approach. At the end of the day, we're all people. So I've focused on establishing key strategic partnerships with people that have a can-do attitude or open to synergistic opportunities, but always remembering that we're real people behind the businesses and technology. I've been married for over 27 years to my wonderful wife, Rochelle. Although we were never really blessed with children, we are blessed with many nieces and nephews and godchildren. So personally, I consider myself a lifelong student of personal growth and leadership development. I've been involved in a number of different organizations, including Entrepreneurs Organization for over 15 years, served both on the local and regional boards. I've gone through a variety of entrepreneurial and leadership programs, including a strategic coach from Dan Sullivan. Some of you might know who he is. And followed many other thought leaders like Tony Robbins, Vern Harnish, Patrick Lencioni, Jim Collins, the list goes on. So always looking to try to find ways to improve and to learn and expand my growing, not only for myself, but to help develop other leaders and any other leaders that I might be able to influence, most importantly, my executive team members. So I really, I'm happy to have everybody here today. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. And we saved the best for last. Fred, can you please tell us, I don't know how you do this in a short amount of time, but tell us what you think would be really important to know about you.
I always love the bar being set high like that. So when
No pressure.
so when I start, I have to live up to it, and I know it's not doing the others service by saying that. But thank you for saying it, and thank you guys for having me here. Fred Bentley, CEO of Dexco. Dexco is an industrial company, mid-market, manufactures highly engineered products. It's a global company. Started in 2016. I started as the CEO. At that time when we formed the company, it was with a private equity partner. Basically, over the last 4 years, we've doubled the size of the company. We've made 21 acquisitions. It's a global company. And so we've had the experience of living with this as it's evolved around the world. And so one thing that I've learned, or it's at least reminded me, is any time that I need to make complicated decisions, the more smart people I'm around and the more smart people that I hear, what ultimately I decide, I end up making a better decision as a result of that. So my goal today, not to tell you that I'm a smart person, but hopefully offer something that you can use that I've experienced and my team has gone through. And so I look forward to do that. Personally, just like Alex, I'm married, been married just over 27 years. Enough, I have to ask you when your date was, Alex, just to see. I have 2 kids. My oldest is 24, lives in Raleigh. And then my youngest, which I'll share a little bit more about, just graduated from Michigan this year. And so we are living this experience in interesting way as we go through it. So I look forward to sharing more with you.
Thanks, Fred. Well, to all involved, basically, I'm going to have 4 whole questions in this entire time, and I'm going to try to only screw up less than 50% of those. That's my bar, and focused. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. What I do want to do is talk about the words pandemic and panic-demic, because those are the 2 things affecting our culture right now, and frankly, beyond our culture, the world right now. Pandemic, Greek in nature, pan, many, of many, demic, but of a certain place, of a certain culture, in a certain time. So a pantheon is a building where you worship many gods versus one god. Pandemic affects a lot of people, but specifically to a community, usually in modern terms now driven by a virus. The Panic-Demic, as I said on March 14th to a very smart and dear friend, McKeel Haggerty, who was the International YPO chair last year, or thereabouts, time flies. On March 14th, when we didn't know what was happening, there will be 2 events. One is a bug, and it comes through quite often in whether you call it the Black Plague or the Spanish flu, whatever the term would be. The second one, and this is the one that's going to be difficult, Panic-Demic, which is the demic mind not thinking clearly when the ground moves. So with these 3 leaders in front of me, who all of you I respect, I'm going to go with 4 questions, and anything you can share with us to help us not have the ground move beneath our feet, or at least feel that there's some solid places that we focus our mind that will help us get through shocks and aftershocks, if you will. Feel free to share. And the more personally, the better. We want to learn about your mind and how you're looking at it. So the first question, I'd like to start with Alex, if that's okay, is how has the pandemic affected you personally and as a leader?
Well, at first, like many, I was trying to make sense of it. I mean, I was asking a lot of the same questions that everybody was asking. Is it real? How bad is it? How will it affect our normal lives? You know, how long will it last? I went through this, I guess, the classic mental shifts of, you know, denial, anger, depression, acceptance, you know. Then I found myself looking for
You're the levels of grief.
yeah.
Okay.
And I guess at that time I found myself looking for, you know, the proper productive, you know, reset, and looking for what the new normal would look like as, you know, time went on and we started to realize the significance of this. I used the time for reflection, I wanted to really decide, what is this going to mean? Let me find some meaning out of what's actually happening and taking place. And how would I adapt and morph into how I was going to be on the other side of this personally? So I kind of look at this like as a giant storm. Like first you initially brace yourself for a storm. Usually if you see it coming, in this case, you know, we had very little time to do that. And then you deal with it as it's happening. And then as it's happening, it's a play-by-play. You know, so, you know, time shrinks in terms of things that happen. Then there's what we haven't seen yet, the aftermath and the cleanup. And then finally getting into a mindset of preparing how to reset how things are going to be, going back to that, you know, new normal. Although at many times, like many, I've had like the Groundhog Day effect. It's really made me appreciate each moment more.
Interesting. Jason, same question to you. And by the way, when Alex, as you were talking, I was reflecting on the psychologist who was in the Jewish internment camps during World War II, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. And basically you can tolerate, in quotes of philosophy, you can tolerate any what, you know the why. So looking for meaning in times of crisis in a personal manner is a brilliant thing to do, even under the stress and duress in unusual time that he was. Jason, what are your thoughts?
So personally for me, kind of put into context, through the pandemic or towards the beginning of the shut-in, I had a 50th birthday party, or for a celebration of a 50th birthday, a party that never happened. So that was something that was an adjustment, and then things started to progress. I needed to get my parents up from Florida and convince them that they needed to come up 2 months early back up to Michigan. And then a president of one of our divisions came down with COVID and tested positive, and dealing with the challenges with his lack of leadership and being out for a while. And then also, most recently, and probably most dramatically, the passing of my brother-in-law, who's only 41 years old last week. It was not COVID related, but dealing with the sudden death of a family member, and how that can affect any family and that family dynamic, let alone in a pandemic, and supporting your mother and father-in-law, as we can all agree that no parent should have to bury their child. So a lot of those different components have really got me focused. And what did I learn personally was that, I'm a relationship-based person to begin with. But I really started reflecting going through this, looking at my calendar in the last several months, and seeing my schedule and seeing the conferences and seeing my travel, and my perception of good quality relationships versus managing a schedule. And that was a huge dichotomy for me. And so I came away with, how's it affected me? It's made me extremely more grateful and appreciative of the people in my life, family members, friends, the executive team, the people in my organization. And so, putting people all above all else, and making sure that it's not just about managing people, but it's going out of your way and making sure that alleviating their fear individually as well as collectively. And I'm sure we'll get into more of the tactical, the conference calls, the Zooms, and really leading from authenticity, being very visible, much more visible than normal, and having that clear communication. And I think that's probably been the most important takeaway for me in having that gratitude and that appreciation for those that are in the inner circle around, because it's been very personal. And but I've learned a lot about myself and perseverance and those that I call friends.
Pretty insightful. Life doesn't stop when schedules get interrupted, and how we respond to that is quite what defines our character, reveals our character, even to ourselves. Fred, same to you. How did this affect you personally? Panic-Demic.
Well, I think about this in kind of four different ways, and there's the work way. We're going to get some more time to talk about that as we go forward, so I'm not going to spend as much time in this answer. And really, I'm going to spend more time talking about the other kind of three groups that, or individuals that it affects me. One is personally my family and the role that I have to play there while we're dealing with the family situation. The second are my friends and what role they play and kind of how we interact. And then the third piece is myself, and kind of what this has reminded me about with them. And so personally, both my wife and I, both of our parents are, both of each of our parents are still alive. So the first thing is in this, we needed to deal with them and make sure that they were handled properly. They have health conditions, so as time has gone on, it's a very susceptible group of people. So making sure that they're safe, taken care of, provided for, and okay is a big deal, and it weighs on you as you're dealing dealing with that, and you want to make sure that that's comfortable. My son lives in North Carolina, and so, you know, a single young person raises another, living on their own, raises another set of at least worries as a parent. I don't want to be insulting to him, but it does raise worries to a parent when that's the case. And then my daughter, I empathize with her. You know, like all seniors this year that were supposed to go through their graduation in one of the best times of their life, they missed out. And so what it reinforced for me as in my family role was I needed to be a voice of reason, a great listener, always be there. And that's hard when you're dealing with all the stuff that you deal with today, is to make sure that you're there for your family, you're consistent, and that you are the role that you should play. And so it was interesting, it was worrisome, it was a challenge, but I think the other participants did a great job of sharing some of the great emotions that can come out of that with improve the bonds and improve relationships that you have, even with your family, if you're able to do this right. I haven't always got it perfectly, but that's what I've strived to do. So that personal group is really a big deal. The second group are my friends, and I use my friends to say everything that I wouldn't say to anybody else. And so every kind of silly theory we have, every kind of thing that frustrates us, everything that you need to get off your chest to make yourself feel better is what role we play for each other. Safe area, and I would say that if you have that, it's really therapeutic in a way to kind of clean your head regularly, to get all that stuff off your mind and not worry about it, and say everything that you're thinking about, and maybe even laugh a little bit about it while you're going through a tough time, and sometimes debate if you want as well. But it's very helpful. The third person is myself, and this really has highlighted, and I'm a focused guy, I'm determined. Certainty is a big deal to me. I like to know what I'm doing tomorrow. I like to know kind of what my plan is, and that really matters.
How's that for you?
So I am really comfortable with the word uncertainty right now. And to the point where emotionally, and probably the first time in my life, there has been times where that uncertainty has crept into my being in a very meaningful way, where I acknowledge it. It's like, I don't know what's going on here. And that's uncomfortable. And so what it did for me, I'm in a situation where I run a company, I have people that depend on me being good at what I do. If I feel that way, how do I feel if I'm one of my employees that don't know if I have a job tomorrow, that don't know, you know, kind of what this is going to do? And that uncertainty is meaningfully different. So by remembering that, I kept a much broader, hopefully more useful perspective by understanding that others are feeling that in probably a meaningfully more way than I am. And it really was kind of an eye-opener and a reminder of me of kind of that servant leadership role that I play, to make sure that I consider that of all the people in each of those three groups that I deal with.
Great answer, and maybe one of the best definitions of what a friend really means that I've heard in a long time. Thanks. Yeah. Jason, I'm going to start with you, but for all of you, the next question is, this is going to be difficult, but I want to put the passion of politics aside and stick with the idea of when something happens in life and you're left to contextualize it without the passion of politics, which is now the biggest business, I think, in industry in the country. Here's the question. A leader's job is to at once be the great contextualizer, tell us what it means. When I say leader, mother, father, partner, friend, business owner, to be the great contextualizer and help people find power in an out of control world. Not control. Power is energy expressed. So in this context, can you speak to both the pandemic virus and the panic-demic virus and all the hoopla attached to it? And again, I'll start with Jason. How do you stay the great contextualizer, which is part of your role, and yet maintain that honesty in being a great student in the moment as well? So Jason,
You know,
can
I
we start with
think that it starts with every individual within themselves. And it's very difficult. Fred was talking about uncertainty. And with uncertainty becomes fear. And with fear then become panic. So, you know, rising above any political side one way or the other, I'll just speak to, you know, any crisis because there are multiple crises that occur for all of us that are on this call and on this panel, not just the coronavirus pandemic. And I think that, you know, when there's uncertainty, tend to think the worst and do an assessment and then look to see what can I do personally. And because I know that I'll be leading other people that may not have that awareness, that may not have that mindset, that may not have the ability for whatever reason to rise above. And so what I do for me is I work on myself first, and that might be going to bed early so I can wake up early, so I can get a different routine going. Maybe it's working on what I call MERPs, a mental, an emotional, a relational, a physical, and then a spiritual context. So if I can't reset myself and I can't be the best version of myself every day and look to support those who support me, my family, my team, my friends, then what good am I to them? Then we're just going back and forth of a deep misery, and that can be a very, very difficult hold of going down that rabbit hole, versus trying to be more of an inspiration, positivity, but not being delusional, but being very authentic in terms of assessing the situation, looking at different outcomes, good and bad, and then taking that and going to my family first in terms of order of importance. Because if I can support my company or my friends, but I'm being a jerk to my family because I'm cooped up in my house all day, how's that going to work out during a quarantine? Probably not very good. And then you're going to have very stressful relationships with the people that you're closest to physically and probably emotionally. So I focus on the family first every day in that morning. And thankfully with a couple of teenagers, they don't get up until noon anyways. But with that, you know, it might be a routine. It might be working out. It might be doing some affirmations on the emotional side or the spiritual side, or reading or journaling. But getting that mindset ready so that I can go out, support my family, whether it's something small or whether it's something large, and then going with my executive team with daily meetings, Zoom meetings, so we can see each other, can check in, can take a look, understand, listen to what their fears are, because they're leaders over their different companies or their different departments. And then being able to
and let me clarify, just because we don't know. Is your leadership team in different countries, within the country, and how many people are on your direct leadership team? Just so when you say that, we can contextualize.
Sure,
Maybe even
sure. It's just in the United States, and it's 3 different companies, 6 people plus myself. So for 3 different companies, that's a small leadership team, and then each one of those companies has its own structure, superstructure. And then it's about supporting those people in there. So I may call people randomly or reach out to them, or a handwritten note or a phone call or an email for different people that are outside of that core of 6. And then, it's to be right there for our representatives and or our clients to make sure, because they're, especially in the financial services industry or insurance or wealth management, can you imagine what's gone through, for the last 90 days? So talk about people that are in uncertainty or in fear. You need to make sure that, we have the right mindset, not only individually, but as a team, a cohesive unit, and making sure that, the tone starts at the top. And if you're not instilling, if I'm not instilling a sense of calm and certainty, visibility, then I would have panic throughout the organization.
Great answer. So the MERPs, I think one of the greatest pieces of advice I heard one of the wisest people I know say in a crisis was protect yourself, because we sometimes forget that if we don't start with that, almost like in an airplane, put your own oxygen mask on first so you really can help others. I think that's a very, very important concept for people to think of. Great answer. Fred, can I come to you next with the same question?
Sure. So I would start with kind of 2 ideas that it's reminded me of. And one reminded me, one is it's at least interesting to me. The first is that it reminds me that almost all of the time, whatever someone does, whether it's personally or professionally, politically, whatever, that whatever it is they do, they typically are doing it from a point of self-interest. And typically that self-interest does not have my best interest in mind. That's okay. It's just normal human kind of behavior. And so whatever we have to do, we kind of have to look at it through the lens of that. The second thing that I think has been amazing.
You all selfish by nature, or do you mean that we only have the context of our mind to determine what reality is?
I think it's not, you can use selfish. I think in this case, if you get into the things that are influencing it, ultimately, once you get past some of the verbal piece of being done, it is self-interest, right? And so that's where people are coming from, and that allows you also to not get bothered that much by what people do, because you understand at least why they're doing it. You may not agree with it, you may agree with it, but you get past that because you understand they're doing it for their self-benefit.
Good clarification.
And so if you get to that point, you can kind of deal with it. So that, I always believe that it just reinforces that. And I think if you think of some of the political piece around it and you think out of it through those lens, you get past the point of what they're really trying to do, what they're really trying to do. The second part, which is amazing to me, is how people are unable to handle conflicting ideas when they're setting direction. Right? And so it is okay to say, people are going to get sick, we're going to have issues, we need to deal with that, and it's okay to run your business. Right? Those things can be conflicting. You just need to figure out how to deal with those conflicting ideas. And it's this idea of an absolute answer is the right answer. Sometimes that may be the case, but most of the time it's not. And so dealing with that conflict of ideas really is a big deal. And I think the people that have set things up to deal with that the most effectively, or the most effective way, are the ones that are going to come out of this ahead. The other thing that it always reminds me is there's no absolute right answer. There are good answers, there are better answers, and there's some that may not be that effective. And in something that's, as I go back to the point of uncertainty at the beginning, where there's no right answer, where there's uncertainty, it matters like getting groups of people together to deal with that. So I think that's a really important point. And then knowing what your role, my role is really incredible to kind of deal with all these different opinions, the uncertainty, and then how do you put things together to work with it, kind of diffuses some of the tension that may exist around the concept for whatever reason it may exist.
I clearly hear that you're bringing your narrative of that you've pulled together about what life is as your consistency in the uncertainty of the time.
A huge deal.
I hear that loud and clear. Alex, didn't mean to save you for last, but figured you probably would just have the perfect answer. Sorry, Fred, see, now giving him the high bar.
No, I'll just give a couple of quick thoughts, but that, Fred, that's very insightful on that uncertainty comment that you made. And Jason, I love that MERPS. I think that's a fantastic tool in terms of self-assessment of where you are mentally, emotionally, relationally, physically, and spiritually. I think that's fantastic. My take on the pandemic virus and the Panic-Demic aspect of it really is that the virus, I don't deny that it's very real and it's impacted so many lives, and I really feel for the families. I don't know how much we all really know about it. I'm sure we'll learn more about it as time goes by, and we have a society today that's scrambling to find ways to measure it, mitigate it, eventually eradicate it, and that then certainly creates a whole lot of uncertainty and anxiety. And part of what doesn't help, and this kind of gets into the panic aspect of it, where, fear and panic, where often we don't make the best decisions when we're in that mindset. A lot would say is mainly media driven. And, like many, it's hard to know what to believe and how to behave from day to day. It's really very difficult. I guess in many cases, a lot of people have said, never let a good crisis go to waste. So I don't know if that's what's happening now. I, again, don't deny that it's very real, but my wife and I, we used to watch the daily briefings from the coronavirus task force briefing, and it got to be too much. I mean, it was just, too much. It was overwhelming, too much information. But I felt the need, especially as a leader, to be informed and to continue to have as much accurate information so that I could be effective in working with my leadership team. I mean, they've been fantastic. I mean, we have these, huddles 3 times a day and compare notes and deal with issues on a day-by-day basis. But the most important aspect of it for me, despite the fact that this thing is very real and that there's a lot of panic associated to it as well, was making sure that our people were safe, and our employees, our clients, who are like family to me. And again, a lot of my response to it has been shrunken down to a day-by-day, play-by-play type thing, as I indicated before. But I did find that there's some, a silver lining here. A good friend of mine once said back when that adversity introduces us to ourselves and our capabilities. These times require our best thinking and best decisions and our best intentional, resolute actions. And I think that's a good time for us to, reflect on that during what we're going through.
Excellent answer. I'm hearing everyone recognize that we enter each age of life as a novice. And so our experience with the particular moment is zero, but our experience with our mind and our understanding of self is all we have. And what can we bring to that moment that we've never seen before, and be our true selves and recognize we're in unfamiliar territory. So as a good friend of mine once said, don't be getting casual on me in Christ. I have 2 questions left here. If we have the time, Jason, or Actually, I'm going to start with Fred, if that's okay. Fred, all three of you had your business was identified by the government as essential and critical. I got a particularly nice letter from the government that said, get a life. So I can't quite relate. But when you're identified as in your business, how do you handle those on-site requirements and the conversations with the people you care about the most, who find their faith in your confidence, your team? And Fred, if I start with you, what did you change when this happened? How you communicate, what you communicate? It can be something as simple as frequency.
Yeah, it's a great question. So if you think about that, if you are reacting at that moment, so everything that I've done in the company in the last 4 years started was done for moments like this, because
Can you speak to them one more time? You cut a little bit. I want to make sure. I don't want to infer anything. I want to hear your words.
no problem. So if you wait until now to react, it's too late. Everything that I have done over the previous 4 years since the start of the company is to be ready for a time like this. And if all of those things that we've been doing, whatever it was, communication, being at our facility, being there when people need it, all of that creates credibility. So when you get into an uncertain situation and you need people to come to work in an uncomfortable situation, what you've done and them having confidence that we will provide an environment and a situation that's safe for them, they believe it. So credibility is the first.
Physically safe or safe, and maybe just emotionally safe.
Both.
Okay.
Both. And so every week I do a phone call to our entire organization, and the first thing that I talk about is safety. I know every accident that's happened in our company that week. I know exactly. And so when you put that level of importance, and we've reduced accidents, for instance, we reduced them by 75% of our company over the last 3 years. When you've done that, and time after time you talk about safety, when you get into a situation like this, people believe you when you talk about safety. So,
No, and I can say that's important. I see a few questions. In the manufacturing environment, that's training, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Then what we do when we communicate, and by the way, we over communicate. So instead of doing a weekly call, I was doing 2 or 3 calls a week during that time. And I was straight with people. This is what we're doing, why we're doing it. May not get it right. We're going to adjust if we don't, but people and giving them the story, which meant we were going to have to reduce our headcount. We were going to have to restructure our business, and being upfront with people is very important. Second thing around that is then being supportive, being there. So as our people were going to work every day, I came to work every day. I've been in the office each day. If I figure if the people in our organization need to work, an effective leader is there as well, taking all the precautions that are logical and sensible, and creating a safe environment where I am as well. At the same time, the people in our headquarters, if they didn't need to be here, we gave them the option of not being here. And so we wanted to make people comfortable. When you're making things, when you're in an industrial company, you can't make those from home. You need to be there to make that. So handling that difference is an important thing, and giving people the choice when appropriate is a big deal. Again, putting myself in the position of others of kind of what they're dealing with. We talked about that earlier. And react is a big deal. Learn from our things that have gone well and the things that haven't. Share those, adjust, be accessible, and then get done. You do all those things tend to work out pretty well.
Great answer. Alex, I'm going to come, and then Jason, you're going to bring up the lead and give us your brilliant closing. I have to say at this point, before also our last question, But still moving forward with this one. I'm very impressed because I know none of you had much time at all to prepare for this today. And I'm really impressed with the candor you're bringing to people because they're seriously tuned in to learn something. And your candor has been the greatest gift you've given us. You're thoughtful gentlemen. Alex, that's your setup for the same question. Essential critical business.
Well, yeah, I mean, so as a technology services provider, we were recognized and are recognized as an essential critical business. And the first thing I really want to say about it is I can't help but think about how proud I am of our team, especially during these unusual times. I mean, we did a lot of the same things in terms of increase the frequency of communication, all of those things, when all of our teams had their own meetings on a regular basis and pivoted quickly. But the I guess added stress really was not only how were we as an organization able to pivot in this time quickly, but how were we able to pivot quickly with almost zero notice on how we helped our clients change the way that they work remotely. So we had to figure out our own situation as well as how do we help our clients, because they have increased their reliance on technology and we're their provider. So we had to really pivot quickly. And we had to take all the safety measures into play as well as the information became available to us. Some of our clients were ready to make the shift than others, but key considerations that we had to take, in mind were, the devices that they had, connectivity, security, they all became key areas of focus. And a lot of those types of conversations that we had with our team members really revolved around safety, of course, but also, the impact of how we were working as well as how we were able to help our customers continue to work. Being on site, that was one of the key things that made it critical for us. I mean, we had to make sure that we were in compliance with, all the safety requirements, masks, distancing, cleaning, personal protection equipment. So, the conversations with our teams really emphasized flexibility, really, in how and where they worked. And just what comes to mind is I just have to say how truly impressed I am with how quickly our team was able to come together, just knowing who they are. And they stood to attention and were ready and rolled their sleeves up. So
I'm not trying to set you up to answer, but I'm genuinely curious. Did you have conversations with your team about let's not just be a subject matter expert who solves a problem, but let's also the nervous system of the people we're dealing with today?
Let's also what? I'm sorry?
Yeah, consider the fact that people are uncomfortable and possibly afraid.
Yeah, again, one of the things that we always do, and I know we're a technology company, but even prior to this crisis is really the impact on it, right? So we're dealing with technology and we're relating the technology, and when it works the way it's supposed to, great. When it doesn't work, well, then there's a mindset that takes place in terms of, well, why? And then knowing and having empathy for what the other person's going through, looking at it from their perspective, that second person perspective, through the lens in which they're experiencing what they have to do and why they have to do it. So having that sense of empathy is one of the key things that we've always talked about within the organization. In fact, that's kind of how we all wave that keep it real flag. Keep it real because that's who we are as real people. So I guess this situation is one that really exemplified our ability to be able to do that and show, under these circumstances, how each of the team members was able to respond in that fashion.
Brilliant. Jason, we'll go to you, but I'm just getting flagged. We have 8 minutes and one question left. I'm not rushing you, but I'm dying to hear your answer to this question. You're an essential critical business and I can tell you take your responsibility with moving your parents back, with having your kids go through this and your wife. you take responsibility very seriously. So how did being an essential critical business affect the conversations you had with your teams?
Your audio's off.
Mine?
Jason
Thank you,
Randall's.
me. Sorry. No, being in the financial services industry, obviously we were deemed to be critical in nature. And I'm going to give you a strategic sandwich with a big slice of tactical in between there, Joe. What we did, it started a couple of years
How
ago.
did you know I was ready for lunch?
We started a couple of years ago where we were planning for a crisis. We didn't know what it was going to be, certainly not COVID-19. But we started to take the investment, the time, the strategy to build out business continuity plans. And more importantly, rather than putting it in a manual and putting it on a shelf and never see it until the crisis comes, we actually implemented that. We executed it. We worked on it every single year, multiple times a year. And what that really did is it helped shape the dynamic of the firm. And so tactically, we started placing other people. 50% of our employees are located outside of our home office, are outside of Michigan. They're located in different states that are support, not just for sales, that are in different time zones. And so we would implement and making sure that people are still working, but okay, this is going to be your week that you're working from home, and testing out the systems and seeing what worked, what didn't work, and whatnot. And I think today, continuing with the tactical, if you haven't done that, start today. Whether we have a wave 2 or a wave 3, or this all goes away next month, and there's going to be another crisis some other time in the future of God knows what. I have no idea. But it's much rather to take the time, the effort, the resources, the investment, and practicing today, now, so that if you haven't done that, you don't get caught in the next crisis when revenues are down, what's happening, and how do I still function? So as a result, coming back out of that on the strategic side again, what we've done, I think it was some Tao, TZO, indicated that in the midst of crisis or chaos, in the midst of chaos, there also lies opportunity. And so that
was the art of war.
Yes. So strategically, by having that sense of when there's chaos, there's opportunity, where there's a lot of space in between. And if you haven't done a dress rehearsal through that, it's hard to fill in the dots. But if you have, and you're prepared with your teams by being consistent, by being visible, by being authentic, by having a sense of calm, those are the spaces in between chaos and opportunity. Then people start settling down. They understand where we are. They understand the why, what's important, what are the priorities, what's the near-term vision. They start moving out of that fear based upon the trust of the leadership of the organization, the frequency, physically being seen by the rest of the team. Then people can start looking at opportunity. And so I think that when you're looking at not only for surviving, but if you can thrive, that is a validation of how tested your systems were in that space in between. So at Concord, first quarter 2020,
your company,
we were up dramatically from where we were year over year for the first quarter of 2019. And 2019 was a record year for us. Same month a year ago. So for us, I think it's about the team, and obviously being from Ann Arbor, being a little bit of a Michigan fan. So
good answer. I know that we're running out of time, so if I could do two things. Number one, I'm going to skip the next question because we just can't possibly cover it. I want to thank you guys for being. I learned a lot. And anytime you're going to be available on camera to share candidly, I'm going to be in the audience if I'm not a moderator. Very helpful, and I'm not just stroking you. This was a very intelligent, candid hour, and I appreciate it. I also want to make sure that we know that next week on the 27th at the same time, We're going to be back. I'm going to be back. Mike will decide. I know Alex is coming back because he's sponsoring that. And we're going to be, I'm going to invite two things. Number one, anybody that wants to come, invite anyone you'd like. And number two, submit any questions you want. Anything you want to talk about or ask about how you're feeling, doing, what you might, how you could be better for others. Submit them. And let's hit how many things we can possibly hit within an hour next week. I can't thank Jason and Fred and Alex enough. I encourage everyone to, I've known a lot of leaders in my tenure, in my 40 years of advising some of the smartest people. And I can't tell you how honored I am and happy I am with you guys taking the time and being so candid today. Thank you very much. And I'm told that you, by the way, I was just notified, you can register for next week through Cygnus, through Alex's, a Cygnus, CYGNUS. And people are dropping off for meetings at this point. Thank you. And Mike, how do I sign off? I'm terrible at this.
I am right here and I'm watching everything. Thank you all really for participating in the panel. Joe, thank you for leading it. Next week, you can register on Cygnus Systems. We just posted it. Appreciate everything. And all you have to do is click stop and we're all set. Thank you. Any parting words from Jason, Alex, or Fred?
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.